Hi, let's talk about Goldmember.
Musical styles are still a very important form of communication for our young people.
The third installment of the Austin Powers franchise hit theaters in 2002, once again directed by Jay Roach and once again written by Mike Myers with help from Michael McCullers. Myers obviously takes up his Powers mantle again. We get many returning characters who I've touched on in our last episode, and Myers' band, Ming T, performs once again with their song Daddy Wasn't There. But with this film comes a few new faces, and do we have some good ones. Up top, we have Fred Savage, whom a few confused for Ben Savage from Boy Meets World, which is wrong yet understandable, as they are brothers and they do look incredibly similar. But most people will recognize him from his early roles in The Princess Bride and The Wonder Years. We also have veteran actor Sir Michael Caine, who has well over 100 acting credits, but who I mostly fondly remember from Zulu and his amazing portrayal of Alfred Pennyworth in the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. Last but certainly not least, we have the Queen Bey herself in what surprisingly is her first major film, Beyonce Knowles, and she also lent her voice to the soundtrack. Once she dipped her toes into the silver screen, she went back with films like The Pink Panther, Dreamgirls, Cadillac Records, and Obsessed. And in case you weren't yet convinced that this franchise was a massive success already, allow me to rapid fire all of the huge celebrities that wanted in on other bit parts in the film. Ming T bandmate Susanna Hoffs, Tom Cruise, Gwyneth Paltrow, Kevin Spacey, Danny DeVito, Steven Spielberg, Quincy Goddamn Jones, Masai Oka, Greg Grunberg, The Osbournes, Britney with a Taste of Your Lips I'm on a Ride Spears, John Travolta, and best of all, Nathan fucking Lane. In my opinion, we won't see this many big names clamoring for bit parts until the third Star Wars trilogy nearly 20 years afterwards. Of course, just as with the rest of the franchise, it's spy-themed, with this in particular playing off of the Bond film title Goldfinger, as well as the Octopussy parody shown within the film itself. And just like the first film, this one uses some humor to mask the more serious talking points.
You want down, mini-me? Use your words like a big boy clone.
Although they don't do it nearly as much as I remember, so I was pleasantly surprised upon the rewatch. Nonetheless, it still definitely deserves more discussion, so let's throw on our wetsuits and dive on in. I do find it interesting that this movie was able to fit two fathers failing both of their sons within the limited time span that we had. The most focused on is Nigel, who has failed both Austin and Dr. Evil. We do get a lot of time between Austin and Nigel, and even very clearly get Austin's core issue.
We were mates, you and I.
I didn't need a friend. I needed a father.
Austin spent most of his life attempting to live up to his father's reputation and expectations, but even when he did achieve acclaim and status, his father wasn't remotely interested in being a part of that. And rather than admit his shortcomings and apologize to Austin, he simply makes a joke and then walks away.
I suppose we'd better go our separate ways then.
Arguably, he fails Dr. Evil even harder. His own child had just survived an assassination attempt, and yet he made zero effort to get his son back because he was
Do so damn evil.
already. At least with Austin, he raised him and gave him a comfortable life, even if it wasn't an emotionally filling one. But with Dr. Evil, or Dougie, he just threw his hands up in the air and took the L. Now, I'll preface this next statement by saying that I acknowledge that, regardless of upbringing, every adult is responsible and accountable for their own actions. But that being said, everything is Nigel's fault. If he wouldn't have been such a shit father, Dr. Evil would have never grown up the way he did, and he would have never bothered the world with all of his half-baked bullshit. Nigel Powers has done more harm in this universe than good, and he should be ashamed. The second father who fails his kids is Dr. Evil. Now, Scott does get the raw end of the deal in that we've watched 3 whole movies of this guy just getting absolutely shit on at every turn, no matter what he does to get close to Dr. Evil. And after dealing with multiple assassination attempts, being verbally and emotionally abused, and having to create sharks with lasers on their head, Scott finally gets to a place where he can be accepted by Dr. Evil, only to have Dr. Evil suddenly switch to the good side and go, well, none of that matters now, you gotta conform to what I want yet again. It's no wonder why Scott completely snaps.
I hate you. I hate you. I don't even know you, but I hate you too! And I especially hate you!
Who wouldn't after all those mind games? But the short amount of time where Mini-Me is the one on the out is just as heartbreaking. Mini-Me is nothing but loyal and loving to Dr. Evil, and then is immediately tossed aside without a second thought once Scott proves that he can be the kind of villain Dr. Evil wanted him to be. So Mini-Me defects to the other side, and Nigel, awful of a person as he is, recognizes that he's being mistreated, saying,
Just because you're 1/8 their size doesn't mean you deserve 1/8 of their respect.
Also, it's hilarious to me that, despite switching to the good side, Mini-Me still has to be a total dick and kick Scott in the shin even after he has him at gunpoint. And since we're talking about Mini-Me, yes, I know Vern Troyer plays him, and he does do a really great job with his physical comedy. Had I done an episode about the second Austin Powers film, he would have been about 90% of what I talked about, but because, and I don't want to make a habit of being negative on this channel, the second Austin Powers film wasn't good. There were a lot of plot holes and moments that would have made for great character growth, but were ultimately played for jokes. So, Vern was amazing there, and he is amazing here. Rest in peace, buddy. And while, yes, everyone's reconciliation ultimately is a bit rushed at the end, I really can't fault them, seeing as they only had about 90 minutes to tell this whole story, and it's frankly amazing that we even got this much character development. For the few who aren't familiar with the term, a fourth wall break is when someone in a film or show directly addresses the audience or makes it clear they know they're in a fictional tale. Please see Deadpool, Rick Sanchez, and or Ferris Bueller for examples. And most of the time, I'm not a huge fan of them. Personally, I do prefer to keep the story self-contained so I'm more absorbed in the world. However, with a series as over the top as this one is, it's incredibly hard to refrain from cashing that chip in. But I have to say that I'm quite impressed with how they chose to do so in this film. In this universe, Austin is a huge celebrity and would obviously have media made about him. So while he's breaking the fourth wall by addressing the audience, Steven Spielberg, and Quincy Jones, it would also make sense that he would be there on those production sets being consulted about a film about his life. And if you look at it from the perspective of a documentary crew following Austin both on the movie set and on missions, it almost negates the fourth wall break entirely. Also, with the exception of having the threesome with the twins, Austin's list of things to do before he dies does actually lay out the entire plot of the movie if you're paying attention. Just something fun and kind of crazy to think about. And to wrap this up, I couldn't end this episode without pointing out the fact that the Hannibal Lecter parody scene was hands down the best parody of that movie we have ever received, and I'm incredibly sad they didn't use it more often as a gag while Dr. Evil was locked up.
Go now, Mr. Powers! Fly, fly!
So, another episode, another film with more merit and depth than appears upon first glance. But I'm curious, what do you think?
Musical styles are still a very important form of communication